Most scam victims aren't stupid. In fact, many of them are smarter than average. And that's exactly why scams still work. Because scams don't attack intelligence. They bypass it. When people hear the word scam, they imagine carelessness. Someone rushing, someone not paying attention, someone who ignored obvious red flags. But reality is very different. Doctors, engineers, business owners, software developers, people who analyze data, manage risk, and make complex decisions every single day fall for scams more often than we're comfortable admitting. Not because they're careless, not because they're naive, but because they trust systems they've learned to trust before. So the real question isn't who gets scammed. It's why intelligence doesn't protect you when it matters most. The myth of the smart immunity. We like to believe intelligence is armor, that if you're logical enough, analytical enough, experienced enough, you're safe. This belief is comforting. It creates distance. If that happened to them, it wouldn't happen to me. But scams don't work despite intelligence. They work because of it. And that's uncomfortable to admit. Because intelligence doesn't eliminate cognitive bias. It often strengthens it. The confidence trap. Let's start with something uncomfortable. Smart people trust their judgment. They've been right before, many times, so their brain assumes it will be right again. This isn't arrogance. It's experience. If your decisions usually work out, your brain learns something important. I don't need to double-check this. I already know how this works. And scammers understand this better than anyone. They don't target ignorance. They target confidence. When someone believes they're too smart to fall for this, their guard doesn't drop dramatically. It drops quietly. No alarms. No resistance. Just a subtle shift from analysis to assumption. And that's when the manipulation begins. Not loudly, not aggressively, but calmly. Because confidence doesn't question itself. How confidence gets used against you. Consider a fake investment opportunity. It doesn't start with promises of fast money. That would trigger suspicion. It starts with logic, market trends, charts, real company names, professional language. Everything feels familiar. The tone is measured. The claims are reasonable. Nothing feels rushed. So the brain relaxes. By the time the red flags appear, something important has already happened. Your brain has made a decision. This makes sense. And undoing that decision feels harder than accepting it. Because reversing it means confronting the possibility that your judgment, the thing you trust most, might be wrong. How scams actually work. Here's the part most people miss. Most scams don't begin with lies. They begin with truth. A real company name. A real process. A real problem you already recognize. They anchor themselves to reality. Once your brain agrees with the first few steps, it stops questioning the rest. This is called commitment bias. After saying yes once, saying no feels uncomfortable. Not because of the scammer, but because of yourself. Saying no would mean admitting, I might be wrong. And smart people hate that feeling. Why red flags don't feel red. People often ask scam victims, how did you miss that? The answer is simple and unsettling. They didn't miss it. They re-ranked it as unimportant. The brain doesn't ignore red flags. It deprioritizes them. Because acknowledging them would require effort, doubt, and emotional discomfort. And the brain's primary goal isn't truth. It's efficiency, the psychology behind it. The human brain isn't designed to detect deception. It's designed to save energy. Deep thinking is expensive, emotionally and cognitively. So when information feels familiar, the brain switches to autopilot. That's why urgency works. That's why authority works. That's why limited time works. These aren't tricks. They're shortcuts your brain already uses every single day. Scammers don't create new weaknesses. They exploit existing ones. Authority, the silent override. When something comes from a figure of authority, a bank, a company, a government body, your brain automatically relaxes. You don't feel manipulated. You feel safe. Authority removes the need to verify. That's its psychological function. Scammers understand this. That's why impersonation is so effective. They don't need to convince you of everything, just enough to let authority do the rest. Urgency, the thinking killer. Urgency doesn't make you stupid. It makes you human. When time feels limited, the brain prioritizes action over accuracy. Because historically, hesitation was dangerous. So when someone says, act now, your account will be locked. This opportunity expires today. Your brain doesn't analyze. It reacts. And reaction bypasses intelligence entirely. Why smart people are more vulnerable. Intelligence often comes with strong pattern recognition, and scammers exploit that. They give you just enough information, so your brain fills in the rest. You don't feel manipulated. You feel like you figured it out yourself. And that feeling is dangerous, because once the conclusion feels self-made, it feels trustworthy, even when it's wrong, especially when it's wrong. The illusion of control. This is the scariest part. Smart people often believe they are actively in control during a scam, but in reality, they're being guided step by step to conclusions that feel independent. The manipulation is invisible, not because it's subtle, but because it aligns with how your brain already works. The realization moment. This is why warning signs are usually noticed after the damage is done, not because they weren't visible, but because the brain didn't consider them important at the time. The brain wasn't asleep. It was conserving effort. And hindsight doesn't reveal stupidity. It reveals missed resistance. The most dangerous belief. The most dangerous belief isn't trust. It's overconfidence in your ability to detect deception. The belief that intelligence alone makes us safe. Because the moment we stop questioning ourselves is usually the moment someone else starts doing it for us. Final thought. Scams don't succeed because people are foolish. They succeed because people are human. And intelligence doesn't remove humanity. It just gives it better excuses. So the real defense isn't being smarter. It's being slower, more skeptical of certainty, more willing to pause. Because the most powerful protection isn't knowing more. It's knowing when not to trust your first conclusion.